Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome of this webinar of this afternoon. The webinar that we are organizing ahead of World Standards Day that is happening on the 14th of October, next week, Tuesday, as you hopefully know. And this year's World Standards Day is focusing on the SDG 17, which is about the partnerships for the goals. So that brings us to our, so we're happy to invite and to have with us today our colleagues from ANEC and ECOS. And that brings us to the topic of this webinar. It will be about the importance of an inclusive standardization system. So welcome everybody, and I hope you can all hear and see as well. I think on the next slide we have a few housekeeping rules that I would like to present you. You were all muted during this presentation, so you cannot ask your questions out loud, but we do invite you to use the Q&A panel to submit your questions, so the speakers can see your questions and also have a look at them to reply them during the webinar. Should your question be unreplied, we will make sure to reply it afterwards by submitting a Q&A report. We are also recording the webinar, so we will provide you with a link to the recording afterwards, and you can share it with your colleagues that should be interested in the webinar. Should you be on X, Blue Sky, or LinkedIn, we're happy to share with you that we are on these platforms, and you can use the hashtag training for standards or the dedicated hashtag for inclusivity of the standardization system, hashtag standards for all. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to my colleague Hulda, who will present you the speakers of today. Thank you.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm happy today to be presenting this topic with you with some of my colleagues from ANEC and ECOS. So I myself is Hulda. I'm Hulda and I'm from CENELEC and I work in European policy. From ANEC today with me I have Chiara Giovannini, who's the Senior Manager in Policy and Innovation and the Deputy Director General. Then I have Michaela Wurich, who's a Lead Program Manager in Sustainability and Services. And then from ECOS, we have joining today Amina Aisani, who's the Senior Program Manager in Standardization. So I will just give a little overview of what is on the agenda today. So we have an introduction to World Standards Day and the SDG 17. Then we'll briefly cover the importance of an inclusive standardization system and give an overview of how stakeholders participate in European standardization. And then I will give the floor to my colleagues from ANEC and ECOS to present some interesting case studies. So ANEC will cover accessibility and sustainability, and ECOS will cover some case studies into fishing gear and cement. Then we'll just briefly cover how you can get involved if you're interested. And then in the end, we have a session to answer all your questions that you may have. So then let's get started. So the World Standards Day is a celebration organized by the International Standards Organizations, ISO, IEC, and ITU, and it takes place every year on the 14th of October. And it's really a celebration to increase the understanding of the importance of standardization, as standards touch almost every part of our daily lives, but they can kind of be not so well known. Standards ensure that products and services work the way we expect them to and that they make life easier and more enjoyable. Standards are also essential to achieve the 2030 Sustainability Agenda and these SDG, the Sustainability Development Goals, which is why they have a specific SDG they pick every year to highlight. And this year it's the SDG 17, which is the Partnership for the Goals. And this SDG explores how standards provide a shared framework that enables meaningful collaboration across industries, governments, and organizations to achieve common objectives, which is why I'm also happy to have my colleagues from ANEC and ECOS presenting with me today, because they're key partners of CENELEC. So then, just to give a little overview of why it's important to have an inclusive standardization system. So an inclusive standardization system that includes participants from a wide range of stakeholders, and this can include societal stakeholders like environmental, consumer, trade unions, but also SMEs, academia, national authorities, industries. They're key to ensuring standards that are high quality, that reflect scientific and technological state of the art, as well as taking into consideration the priorities of the wider society. Standards that have been drafted with wide range of stakeholders also ensure legitimacy and trust in standards that are then market ready and adopted by industry. They also ensure innovative solutions and knowledge sharing that lead to forward-looking standards. Wide range of stakeholders also ensure that regulatory alignment and policy coherence that will facilitate smoother implementation. Also having a wide range of stakeholders ensure that the wider societal goals are taken into consideration and sustainability is promoted. Then standards also are practical and easy to implement. They can evolve over time with the changing technologies, markets, and societal expectations. Support fair competition and innovation and growth across all businesses, as well as standards that are then relevant and effective over time. But then I will give it over to my colleague Chiara to give a little bit more insight into this.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone. I'm very pleased to be with all of you today here to celebrate World Standards Day. What I would like to add, and as we have heard from Ulda, standards are increasingly used to underpin legislation, policies, and technologies that affect everyone, all consumers, as well as they have an important environmental impact. Broad participation from consumers, civil society, SMEs, academia, regulators, trade unions, environmental interests ensures that the outcomes of the standards reflect society's full range of interests and adds legitimacy to the standardization process. Inclusiveness brings diverse expertise and perspectives, which in turn improves the quality and the robustness of the standards. For that, we need an inclusive process to help produce standards that are more practical, balanced, and widely adoptable. Partnerships among stakeholders reinforce the implementation and compliance to standards, and they transform the standards from static documents, even if in electronic format, into shared tools for trust in a sustainable future. And this is the aim of the SDGs, the sustainable goals of the UN. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you for that, Chiara. Then we just wanted to give just a brief introduction into how European standardization system works and how stakeholders participate in it. So CENELEC are 2 out of the 3 European standardization organizations together with ETSI that are named in the regulation 1025 from 2012. So CEN covers standardization topics in various sectors, and CENELEC focuses on the electrotechnology sector. And in the CENELEC Strategy 2030, an inclusive standardization system to be the preferred choice for standardization in Europe is one of the main goals. But the CENELEC commitment to inclusiveness is also further reinforced, for example, by the European Regulation 1025 and the European Standardization Strategy. And this is a little screenshot from the European Regulation 1025, where it mentions that European standardization organizations shall encourage and facilitate an appropriate representation and effective participation of all relevant stakeholders, including SMEs, consumer organizations, environmental and social stakeholders in their standardization activities. So how do different stakeholders participate in the CENELEC work? So in the middle, in the little bubble, we can see the technical committees and working groups at the European level. And as Chiara already mentioned a little bit before, so the standards that are drafted can either come from market needs or the policy needs. But then how do people participate in the technical committees and working groups? So we have national members, so the national standardization bodies and national committees, they can send experts to the technical committees. And these are experts from industry. They can be SMEs, national authorities, professionals, academia, certification bodies, also societal stakeholders possibly. But then also on the European from the European organizations, there are observers and experts sent to the technical committees, for example, from the European institutions, CENELEC partner organizations, which the Annex 3 are a part of. I'll tell you a little bit more about that soon, and liaison organizations. So the Annex 3, the name can be a little bit mysterious, but basically they are organizations that have been named under the Annex 3 in European Regulation 1025 to ensure that different underrepresented stakeholders are represented in European standardization. So ANEC and ECOS are, for example, 2 Annex 3 organizations that represent consumers and environment. But then we also have ETUC, who represent workers, and SBS that represents SMEs. So these are the Annex 3 organizations that have been named in the European Regulation 1025. So I hope this gave a little short introduction and overview of the European standardization system and how stakeholders participate. But now I will give it over to Chiara and the other colleagues to present these practical case studies in how they actually participate in the European standardization work.
Thank you very much, Hulda. And we will start with sharing with you some case studies about accessibility. We are very proud to present our involvement, the final results of two standards, one at the European level and the other at the international level, which we think are going to have a very important impact in terms of sustainability and accessibility of our societies. The first standard is EN 17999, Accessible Systems for Living Independently, Requirements and Recommendations. It was developed by CENTC 293, assistive products for persons with disability. It is a standard that highlights the role that standards can have in enabling persons with disabilities and older consumers to live independently. It is embedding accessibility by design and usability in standardization, and to show that accessibility is not only technical, but it is also a commitment to ensure that all consumers can live with dignity in an autonomous manner. This standard was approved this year, and we of course contributed and supported its adoption. It was published at the beginning of this year, and it can be adopted at the national level, perhaps also translated in the CEN member countries. Because it is a milestone in promoting inclusion, we hope that this will happen soon. Next slide. The second example that we wanted to share with you, it's an international standard, ISO 5727, on accessibility and usability of the built environment, accessibility of immovable cultural heritage, principles and methodology for interventions. It was developed by ISO TC 59, Subcommittee 16, on accessibility and usability of the built environment. It is a standard that contains principles and methodologies for improving the accessibility of immovable cultural heritage without changing the cultural aspect, and to ensure that there is a conservation, restoration, but that also accessibility needs are implemented. It is, again, not only a technical requirement in terms of accessibility, but it is also a way to making sure that the cultural heritage is inclusive and shareable by all. Next slide. This standard was approved last year, and it is intended for a wide audience, including the heritage owners, managers, curators, architects, engineers, designers, builders, accessibility experts, and of course, tourists, consumers of all ages and needs. We supported the approval of this standard, and we think it will contribute to a fairer society. Next slide. The next case studies I wanted to share with you are our involvement in the European Accessibility Act Standardization Request Deliverable. You might know that there is a European Accessibility Act which is applicable as of June this year, and many products and services have to become accessible. The tool to implement this obligation is harmonized standards, and we have a series of existing standards that are going to be revised to make them harmonized standards, one on access to the built environment, one on accessibility requirements for public ICT products and services, one on design for all, accessibility following a design for all approach. We are also going to have new standards on accessibility of non-ICT information related to products, and another one on accessibility of support services related to products and services, such as help desks. Several working groups and joint technical committees of CENELEC and also ETSI are working on those standards. We are supporting them. There is a little bit of delay in the session process, and therefore we encourage all the parties together to push for the adoption of those standards in order to provide manufacturers, service providers, the tools to implement the obligations of the Accessibility Act. Thank you very much for your attention. I leave the floor now to my colleague, Michela.
Thank you, Chiara. I would like to share some case studies from the sustainability sector of activities that ANEC has been following. The first standard I want to talk about is ISO 14020. This is about principles and general requirements for environmental statements and programs for products. So basically related to the environmental labels we see and declarations we see on our products. We have long supported the revision of this standard series because it's various standards that relate to environmental labeling, because we found a need to update the typology of labels that they were covering so that they would really reflect what is on the market. This revision has started in 2019, and the standard 14020 was revised and approved in 2023. Our comments were largely accepted, and also we were given the task to draft some parts of the standard in collaboration with other members of the committee. So our input was very welcomed, and therefore we supported its adoption with our national members. And this standard is used as basis for the revision of the other standards in the series that is still ongoing. Actually, the meeting in October will resolve the comments collected at this stage. And these standards are therefore checked for alignment with the requirements and definition that ISO 14020 has set. And in particular, we gave input in the standards on self-declared claims recently, so ISO 14021 that you see at the end of this list, where we succeeded in including a definition of greenwashing, of course, very important. And we are collaborating closely also with our colleagues in ICOS on issues of common concern. The other input that is very relevant to us is to ISO 14024. This is a standard that forms the basis for eco-labels. And eco-labels are the environmental labels and declarations that are most important from a consumer perspective, are the ones that we support the most, because they are the ones that can more easily help identifying products that are constituting environmental excellence. So in that case, we're also helping in improving the text on how to achieve this. In the next slide, I would like to talk to you about another important success story that is from at the European level. This is EN 45560, published last year, on methods to achieve circular design of products. We find this standard is a useful toolbox for companies for them to achieve circular product design. And the way the document is structured allows to assess design features versus circularity targets, but by giving to the user of the standard questions, examples, and references also to other useful standards in this field. And of course, it's also relevant from our perspective that there is not only requirements on design, but also on communication. And I still want to say something about the slide, that our role has been to bring the consumer perspective in this standard. And this has been possible thanks to the Project Real Life Standards. This is a project that we carry out with our colleagues in ICOS to be able to bring the consumer voice and the environmental interest in the standardization relating to eco-design and energy labeling. And in this standard in particular, ANEC ensured key changes, such as the requirement for spare parts being available for the whole service life of a product. In the next slide, I would like to tell you some key takeaways from these two case studies. We see how at international level, the standards developed on environmental labeling can help enhancing clarity and therefore providing harmonized definitions, methods, and criteria. that can potentially provide a level playing field in this area. And on the other hand, at European level, in eco-design and energy-related standards, ANEC experts have helped us collect some important lessons. We see how our experts' views are welcome, and they are also appreciating how they can influence eco-design standards and therefore the markets where these standards are used. And they also enjoy a constructive and inclusive space, they say, when attending meetings of standardization on this subject. We can safely state that consumer and environmental input is key in shaping these standards, and that ANEC can make a difference despite the challenges that we may face.
My turn. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amina, and I work for ECOS, the Environmental Coalition on Standards. ECOS is an international NGO, and we are also one of the Annex 3 organizations, like Hulda has mentioned, which means that basically we are kind of mandated by the Commission to represent the environmental interests in standardization, especially with those standards who support legislation. So why would environmental stakeholders participate to standards development? Well, because standards are concrete tools. They have a real and tangible impact on the markets. And our ambition is really to make sure that the standards do not only serve the industry, but also the environment and the society as a whole. What we do is really that we just raise the bar. We push the industry to go the extra mile, you know? And even though they have their own economic interests, they cannot really impact, well, at least they're aware of their impact on the environment. If we go one slide, yes. So how do we work? I think it's important to take a moment to understand how societal stakeholders participate in standardization. And in 2025, I think it's time that we move away from that misconception that stakeholders like us do not have a seat at the table. We do. We understand the game and we play by the rules. At ECOS, our staff are experts in their fields. We work as well with more than 60 experts in their field, a pool of experts. They're experts in their fields. We're also highly selective. So we understand the rules and we participate meaningfully and contribute meaningfully to the technical work. I've been asked to provide 2 case studies, and today I'll be talking to you about fishing gear and cement. The work on fishing gear has been finalized, and it's about circular designs of fishing gear and aquaculture equipment. I'm taking 2 minutes to explain also the context. So this standard has been requested to support the European Single-Use Plastics Directive. Taking 2 minutes to emphasize the context. If we look at the damage caused by plastics on the global marine ecosystem, it costs every year 13 billion euros. And this is only due to plastic. This is huge. Of course, there is some actions that are being taken up at European level. Producers, for example, now have to pay to separate collections, transport, and treatment of the waste coming from the gear. They also have to raise awareness on the topic that the gears also contain plastics, and member states are also now obliged to set up national annual minimum collection rates for recycling of those elements. This standard is not to provide presumption of conformity, but it is an important standard because if you go one slide, thank you, Hulda. This is an important standard because it harmonizes the language. It harmonizes the language. It helps manufacturers to also adopt circular designs, circular models. You can find guidelines, and the definitions are also harmonized in the standard. Why was it important for ECOS to participate? If you go one slide, thank you, Hulda. So why was it important for us to participate? This standard was important because it was supporting a directive. For us, it was also very important to make sure that the definitions and the concepts that are being drafted in the standard align with the terms and definitions that were also in the legislations, that we align also with the European waste hierarchy, and we avoid greenwashing, especially when it comes to biodegradable plastics. Yes, well, I'm gonna stop here. And then moving to another case. So the work on fishing gear, this is something that has been finalized, and I'm taking the opportunity to speak about an ongoing work as well. Here I am mentioning cement and concrete because those standards are very much related. And why would environmental stakeholders look into construction products? Well, the solution is really clear. It's a huge polluter. Construction products are huge polluters. We estimate that construction products contribute by 250 million tons of CO2 annually. It's also a third of waste generated each year, third of freshwater used. This is huge. And it is a sector that has been, if you go one slide, and this is a sector that has been also flagged as one of the sectors that needs to be decarbonized. And why cement specifically? Because cement is the largest emitters among all energy-intensive products. It is the most consumed man-made material and accounts for 8% of CO2. It is also one of the industries that has been also spotted as one of the sectors that needs to be decarbonized as soon as possible. One slide more, yes. For us, it also is a sector where we see an opportunity, because as it has been flagged by one of the sectors that needs to be decarbonized, we've also noticed that the industry is looking at how to innovate in that sector, right? They're putting out investments out there to produce greener cements in a way. The problem is the current standards are blocking those innovations. The standards as they are today are key barriers. How does this barrier look like? No, you were right, Hulda, you can. Well, the standard as it is today is what we call a prescriptive standard, which means that in the scope of the standard, you have a list of ingredients. And if your product out there doesn't have the same list of ingredients, then you cannot use the standard, and then you cannot market your product like the traditional players on the different member states. So our ambition is really to move away from that recipe-based approach and to move to an approach where standards would look into the performance of the product. And this will unlock innovations, because if you ask a producer to stick to the list, then he will not try to find solutions to alternative solutions that would alternative solution. So our objective is really to move from that prescriptiveness to looking into the final product and looking into the performance of the final product. I think that was my last slide. Hold up. No, I still have one. Well, again, this is also a study that has been done by OECD, and it shows that Europe, unfortunately, is one of the countries that has the approach, this prescriptiveness approach, listing the list of ingredients and blocking the innovation, while in other countries, they have moved from a prescriptiveness to a more performance-based approach. And this is what we want also for Europe to do, to unlock the innovations.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all for these examples on the practical work that you do at ANEC and ECOS. So then in the end, we just wanted to give a brief slide to let everyone know how you can get involved in standardization in case you're interested. So you can get involved at the national level through the national NSBs and NCs. We've got the links there where you can find all the different CENELEC members. For SMEs, we have a specific national SME help desk that you can find through the link. If you want more information on societal stakeholder and SME participation, you can visit the specific websites. You can also contribute to national level standards bodies through the national associations that are active in standardization. And in European level, you can get involved through the European associations and federations that partake in standard work, which include, for example, ANEC 3 organizations. And then we have some links and contacts for ANEC and ECOS that presented here today. Then I will give the floor back to Els to launch the feedback.
Thank you, Hilda. Yes, indeed. I prepared a small feedback poll for the audience. So I would like to ask you to all submit your replies to the 3 short questions. We will use the replies to improve our webinars in the future. So thanks a lot for that. And we can leave it open, Hilda, for a moment, I think, while
Okay.
we go through
Perfect.
the questions.
Yes. Then we have the last slide for the questions. How should we?
Hulda, I will be looking at the questions,
And you have that moment. Perfect.
I have a couple that I can answer directly, and then, of course, I'm happy for my colleagues to intervene. The first question from Suzanne is about the need to have an inclusive standardization system. However, she's expressing doubts on how this inclusiveness can be ensured in the so-called possible alternative to standards in terms of common specifications by the European Commission. This has been announced in some new legislative proposals that are called omnibus for the single market, and I'm happy to answer the question without starting a discussion on the topic, because it's not really the topic of today's webinar. But what I can tell you is that our understanding, because of course we have also this concern about inclusiveness, and we have shared it with the European Commission in our positions on the omnibuses together with ECOS as well. The common specifications could be or should be implementing acts by the European Commission. They follow a specific rule for public consultations, inclusiveness. It is very similar to what is happening with standardization requests. You know that there are specific phases of internal and external consultations so that all stakeholders are able to input their views. We expect that this openness and inclusiveness is to be also observed in such cases, whether those common specifications are going to be part of the legislative acts that foresee harmonized standards as a kind of alternative or not. I'm happy then to take also the second question about the 2 examples that I made of accessible standards, standards on accessibility topics, and by Natalie. And I'm very happy to say that indeed our experts were participating in the work, and as consumers we represent the users of the products and services or built environment. We are very grateful to our experts to be there. Our experts are experts in the field, and they are also members of our working groups. Therefore, they get the briefing, the feedback from a variety of accessibility experts from our accessibility working group. So there is a direct user experience that we can bring to the table in addition to the technical expertise. And one of the experts participating in the standardization examples that I made, the one on living independently, so EN 17999, is Bart, and Bart is asking the third question that I'm very happy to also take. Bart is presenting the needs of the European Blind Union, and he's a part of our accessibility working group. He is one of our most active experts, and Bart is sharing the problem of lack of accessibility of the developing tools, the online platforms. This is an enormous problem that we have been highlighting for a very, very long time with with CENELEC, ISO, and IC, but we don't see a lot of improvement. So thank you, Bart, for asking this question, because it allows us to bring again to the forefront this very important issue. I will continue to bring it to the attention of the decision-making bodies of CENELEC, and I think in the attendance we also have some representatives, so please expect additional questions from our side. We can't have an inclusive sanction system if some experts can't use the platforms because they are not accessible and not compatible with screen readers, for example. This is not acceptable, and it has to change, especially now that standardization is moving towards digital platforms faster and faster. We have another question from Suzanne. I don't know whether Michela and Amina would like to take it. Otherwise, I'm also happy to contribute.
Yeah, you can also give your contribution if you wish, maybe on the definitions in legislation. But first of all, I agree that, of course, having aligned definitions is very important and useful. That was also the point in my explanation of the case of 14020 series of standards. To refer to explain what relevance there may be in legislation or how definitions are aligned in legislation. In the case of green claims, the Green Claims Directive in Europe, there's a proposal that is currently on hold, but we hope the Danish presidency of the European Council will help progress on. We see that the proposal made by the Commission refers to ISO standards when talking about the methods that need to be used to substantiate green claims. However, generally, standards are still voluntary tools, and therefore, if the legislation was using a definition that is not exactly the same, of course, the legislation has a precedence as priority. I don't know if that answers your question, and I see, I mean, I was typing something. I don't know if you want to take the floor and give your...
No, I agree with what you said. It happens indeed that legislations also refer to the definitions that you can find on standards. You can find it, for example, also on the green public procurement, where they refer many times to standard definitions and standards. So if something exists and it is relevant, usually they take it. No, I'm not going to add more than that.
And the next question is from Carmen. Are there any practical examples that we could share of any standards that are addressing accessibility of infrastructure services by all, including women?
I'm not so sure I understand what is meant by infrastructure services. What I can say is that under the European Accessibility Act, services are covered, a specific category of services, and the provision of services has to be done in an accessible environment. So we are going to have standards on those elements. The accessibility needs are accessibility of persons with disabilities, whether or whatever the gender. And in terms of accessibility and security, perhaps, of infrastructure and built environment, I know that there are also some standards on security services, and I know that my colleague Michela was working on those standards several years ago, and they were published, and I think they can be used. I don't know, Michela, if you can add some aspect. It was about the public security.
Well, with our expert, we were mainly involved with a coordination group on the security. And a standard that you make me think of is the one relating to fire safety and security, where we had seen how, unfortunately, often these two aspects need to risk having to make trade-offs. So you want, for example, a door to be fire safe and to be secure in your and safe and secure in your apartment, but you don't want to have like a contradicting requirements on how to evacuate or how to safely stay in. You see, I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but somehow the requirements may have been in contradiction, but the standard on fire safety and security allowed for achieving coherence, especially with different rules in different countries.
Thank you very much, Michaela. Yes, indeed, it's what I had in mind, because those infrastructure services are linked to evacuations, to built environment, to national rules. And again, we can show you how many standards we are working on that really can have an impact on consumers' everyday life. The other question is a provocative question from an ANEC member, an expert, Malcolm. And perhaps if Amina doesn't mind, I would like to ask Amina to answer the question, because of course I know Malcolm and it wouldn't be fun otherwise.
I'm happy to answer the question. I think, Malcolm, if you don't mind me using your first name, I think we should celebrate, because today civil society is an actor of the standardization system. I understand the frustration behind what you're saying, and of course, there is still improvement that can be made. We've made some progress. I think we've made some progress with some standardization organizations, for example. We need to improve inclusiveness at all levels, whether it's at national level, at European level, or at international level. And because we also understand the interconnection between all those levels, inclusiveness really needs to be tackled. But we are an important part of the system, so we have to celebrate as the others. Let's work together. I think CEN and CENELEC, by organizing this webinar, also show that they are interested into inclusiveness and making sure that all the actors of the system also understand that Annex III and civil society in general is welcome at the table. What we have tried to show with ANEC is also why we need to be there and how can we contribute to make the standards also valuable for the market, and not only reflecting the private interest, but also the public interests. So let's celebrate. And then tomorrow, let's speak about how we can make further progress.
Great, thanks, Amina. Then I see a question from Vicky on regarding the home renovation. Are there any practical standards that are addressing to meet climate goals? Would you have perhaps, Amina, something for that? Is it relates to climate goals or?
Construction. We are heavily involved in construction. Particular standards that are addressing to meet climate goals, well, it's not really on renovation, but mostly on construction products that are used. So we are promoting life cycle analysis, the environmental product declarations, all those elements that would ensure that the products that we use are contributing to the climate goals. In terms of renovations, I am not sure I can give an answer to that, but I can come back to you. I can try to check with the colleagues that are working in buildings and see if there are any that are interesting. I can come back to you, Vicky.
Okay.
Can I comment also?
Yeah, sure.
Very briefly. Yeah, as ANEC, we have been following the work of CENTC 350 on sustainable products, and ECOS now is much more sustainable construction products, pardon. And I know ECOS is much more involved in that field currently. What we got more involved in is energy efficiency of buildings. So there's also a committee that deals with the energy efficiency of buildings, supporting the EPBD, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. But of course, in renovation, I think sustainable construction products may be very relevant. Thank you.
Great. Then I see a question that would be maybe for the ANEC colleagues. So how many groups representing the disability community participated in the standards process? And what tools worked for you for your outreach to get these groups to the table? Would ANEC have some?
Yes, I'm happy to take the question. And as I mentioned, ANEC is an association representing consumers' interest standardization. We represent the interest of all consumers, whatever their ages and abilities. And we collaborate, we participate in standardization in collaboration with the disability community. We have an accessibility working group that is composed by experts, again, of all ages and abilities. It is chaired by the Vice Director General of the European Disability Forum. And as mentioned, the experts sitting in our working group are coming from the Consumer Association, but also from disability associations such as the European Blind Union and other associations. Our reaching out is quite natural. It has been building up for many, many years. And we are therefore working together for a long time. But as Bart mentioned, there is an issue of accessibility of tools used for developing standards. In addition to our own participation as stakeholders, I need to mention that, as you know, standardization is developed according to the national delegation principles. So in the national delegations, you have experts of all abilities and ages. From our experience, there are not many, but in some countries, you have the disability community participating directly at the national level and therefore then in the national delegations. It is, however, a difficult task because of the lack of funding, dedicated funding at the national level. So the inclusiveness that we try to celebrate today at the European level should be improved at the national level. And this is something that perhaps can bring us to the other and final question for the time being. So Ulda, would you like to explain a little bit the CENELEC position perhaps, and then with ECOS we are going to also explain, and we can also mention that we work together, and that in November we will be working together specifically on this issue.
Yes, great. I can give a brief background. So currently the European Standardization Regulation, so the 1025 that I mentioned already in the first slides, it is currently being revised. So the question from Luca was, to what extent can better inclusiveness be achieved through the revision of the European Standardization Regulation? But I would really like to hear the ANEC and ECOS position on what do you see as practical things that could be added or changed to the regulation to achieve better inclusiveness?
Amina, would you like to go first?
Yes, I can go first without going too much into the details, because again, this is something that I guess the Commission should be answering to. But from our perspective, I think it's really important because, as I said, the system is really interconnected between the national, European, and international system. And sometimes inclusiveness is not as it should be at all levels. So the idea is really to find ways to promote inclusiveness at European level, yes, but by reinforcing our contribution as Annex 3, but also promoting inclusiveness at national level because of the national delegation principle that Chiara has mentioned, and also at international level. It's also super important that the Commission looks at that, because if we're speaking competitiveness, if we're speaking about the primacy of international standards, it is important that our voices are also heard at international level. So to me, inclusiveness needs to be looked at all levels, at European level, by reinforcing our participation as Annex 3, but also how to ensure that also at national level, in the different national standardization bodies, we have stakeholders that represent the voice of civil society, and at international level, how can we get also those voices being heard, especially for the standards that support legislations.
And I can add, as ANEC, that we share all those points. As already hinted, we have identified an issue in the national inclusiveness, and because national delegation is applied to European and international standardization, this is where we think the essential regulation should look at in terms of promoting member states' financial support to national stakeholders. This is really what is needed, and this is one of the part of the asks that we have in the context of the revision of the standardization regulation. It is also a question of better applying the rules that already exist, especially some CENELEC rules that sometimes are not really known. They should be better applied. And we are going to discuss all of these in the next months, also together with CENELEC and with our stakeholders, of course. You might know that there is an open consultation on the revision with a questionnaire, and I suppose that all of us will contribute to it.
Indeed, perfect. Thank you both. That is all the questions we have for today. In case no more questions pop up, I guess we can end the webinar a little early. And then we just have the last thank you slide. So thank you all for participating today. I hope it was useful. And we will, the recording will be uploaded online, right, else? So that in case you want to come back, or some people who weren't here today want to view it, it's available. And then I wish you everyone a great rest of the day.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.